Brother Kelvin, Pastor Daniel's voice came out firm but polite. I hope I heard you correctly. You said you are interested in my daughter. Kelvin nodded slowly, keeping his tone calm. Yes, sir. I've been praying about it for a while. I believe Mary is the woman God has prepared for me. The pastor leaned back in his chair, studying him like a man trying to solve a riddle. I see. And what do you do for a living? I am a primary school teacher. Kelvin answered without hesitation. For a moment, silence filled the office. The pastor's eyes flickered, not with anger, but with quiet disbelief. He adjusted his glasses and forced a thin smile. That's wonderful, he said slowly. Teaching is noble. You must love children. Kelvin smiled faintly. Yes, sir. It's not the most rewarding job financially, but it gives me peace. The pastor nodded again, still smiling, though his mind was already racing ahead. A teacher? A man of limited means, wanting to marry his daughter who was a final year law student and already engaged in church leadership. All right, the pastor said after a pause. Let me pray about it and get back to you. Kelvin stood, thanked him, and walked out quietly. He didn't look disappointed, not even nervous, just calm, almost too calm. But when the door closed behind him, Pastor Daniel exhaled deeply, his smile fading instantly. A teacher? He muttered under his breath. God, please, not that one. He didn't hate Kelvin. In fact, he admired his humility. But the thought of his daughter struggling with bills, counting coins for rent, and living from paycheck to paycheck, that terrified him more than anything else. He wanted her secure, stable, comfortable, and in his mind, a man earning a modest teacher's salary could never provide that life. That night, he couldn't sleep. He told his wife, Grace, what had happened. A teacher, she repeated, half asleep. Did you tell him no? Not yet. I told him I would pray about it. Please pray fast, she said, turning over. Our daughter deserves better. Let's not waste anyone's time. He stared at the ceiling in silence. Her words echoed what was already sitting heavily on his heart. 3 days later, he invited Kelvin to his office again. Brother Kelvin, I prayed sincerely. He began with a soft voice, pretending to be pastoral, but certain of his decision. The Lord gave me clarity. My daughter, Mary, is not his will for you. Kelvin's expression didn't change. I understand, sir. God's will be done. The pastor nodded. That's the spirit. Don't be discouraged. You're a good man, humble, hardworking, and sincere. But I think your path aligns with someone else. Kelvin tilted his head slightly. Someone else? Yes, the pastor replied, leaning forward. Sister Juliet. Kelvin frowned lightly. Juliet? Yes, Juliet. She's one of our ushers, a beautiful soul, patient, prayerful, not materialistic. I sense in my spirit she'll walk with you faithfully regardless of your circumstances. Kelvin paused, then smiled faintly. If that's what you believe God is saying, I'll pray about it too. Do that, son. I truly believe it's divine. That evening, after Kelvin left, Pastor Daniel called Juliet into his office. She came in looking anxious, clutching a Bible close to her chest. Good evening, sir, she greeted, bowing slightly. Sit, Juliet, he said kindly. How are you? I'm fine, sir. He smiled warmly. I called you here because I've been praying for you, and I believe God has shown me something wonderful concerning your future. Her eyes widened. Something wonderful? Yes, he said, nodding. There is a brother, Kelvin. You know him? Brother Kelvin? She asked, thinking. The teacher? Yes, that one. He's a good man, a man of peace, God-fearing, humble, and patient. I sense strongly that he is your husband. She blinked, confused. My husband? Yes, he said confidently. I can feel it in my spirit. This isn't emotion, it's revelation. You've been waiting on God, haven't you? Yes, sir, she whispered, for years. Then stop waiting. God just answered your prayer. She sat there quietly, her mind spinning. She had barely spoken to Kelvin in church. He was quiet, kept to himself, always sat at the back. But if her pastor said it was God's will, who was she to argue? If you say so, sir, she finally said. Good, he smiled. I will arrange a meeting soon. You both talk, pray together, and let God lead from there. That night, Juliet knelt by her bed, whispering a prayer she didn't fully understand. Lord, if this is your will, let my heart accept it. Even if he has nothing, if he is yours, I will love him. The first time Kelvin and Juliet met, it wasn't love at first sight. At least, not the kind that set fireworks off. It was quiet, awkward, yet strangely warm. Pastor Daniel had arranged a brief get-to-know-each-other meeting after midweek service. Juliet came dressed modestly, a soft pink blouse over a navy skirt, while Kelvin wore the same simple shirt he'd worn to church the Sunday before. Brother Kelvin, the pastor said with his fatherly smile, this is Sister Juliet. I believe God is beginning something beautiful here. Juliet smiled shyly. Good evening, sir. Good evening. Kelvin replied softly. He could tell she was nervous. The kind of nervous that came from trusting someone else's decision about your life. Pastor Daniel clapped his hands lightly. Good, good, good. I will leave you both to talk. You can sit outside in the garden for a few minutes. Just get to know each other. When he left, Kelvin turned to her. I hope you are comfortable with this. Juliet gave a small, uncertain laugh. Honestly, I'm still trying to process everything. Pastor just called me and said he believed you were God's will for me. I didn't know what to say. He nodded gently. He told me something similar. I didn't expect it either. Then she looked at him, studying his calm eyes. But I believe God can use anything. Maybe this is how it starts. He smiled. Maybe it is. They talked about work, church, little things. She told him about her job as a receptionist at a small printing company. He told her about his pupils, how he loved watching children learn and grow. By the time the conversation ended, something gentle had already begun. No spark, no drama, just an easy peace that made both of them feel safe. Over the next few weeks, they spoke more often. He would walk her home after service, help her carry her bag, ask about her day. She admired how kind and grounded he seemed. No ego, no flash. When she once mentioned struggling to pay her rent, he offered to help, but she refused. No, please, she said quickly. You don't have to. God will make a way. He smiled. All right, I respect that. And he truly did. There was something pure about her. Something that made him quietly thankful that the pastor had pushed them together. By the third month, they were inseparable. Everyone in church noticed. Juliet's friend teased her endlessly. So, this is the brother pastor matched you with? He's gentle. You better hold him tight. Don't worry, Juliet. When you people marry, maybe you will start teaching too. She would laugh, blush, and say nothing. In truth, she had already fallen for him. Not because of his job, but because of how he treated her. He didn't just listen, he cared. He prayed with her, he remembered her worries. He believed in her dreams more than she did. And one quiet evening, as they sat under the same garden tree where they first met, Kelvin took her hands and said softly, Juliet, I know we started in an unusual way, but I have prayed about this, really prayed. You've brought peace into my life. Will you marry me? Her eyes widened, trembling. Are you serious? He nodded, more serious than I've ever been. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, yes. He smiled, slid a simple silver ring onto her finger, and kissed her forehead gently. When Pastor Daniel heard the news, he was overjoyed. You see, I told you it was God's will, he said to his wife. Look how fast God works when you obey. Grace smiled. I'm happy for Juliet. She deserves happiness. Of course, he said proudly. And you will see, Kelvin will take care of her. He is a responsible man. Even if he's not wealthy, Love is what matters most. He had no idea how ironic those words were. The wedding came quickly, the church buzzed with excitement, decorations, music everywhere. Juliet's gown was simple but beautiful. When the first guest walked into the venue, everyone froze. It was like a scene from a royal ceremony. Flowers everywhere, a live orchestra, food flowing endlessly, an elegant hall filled with dignitaries no one in church had ever seen before. Pastor Daniel looked around, utterly confused. Who sponsored all this? He asked one of the ushers. The groom, the usher replied. He paid for everything. The pastor's heart skipped. Kelvin? The same teacher? He finally found him, smiling and greeting guests with quiet confidence. Pastor Daniel pulled him aside. My son, he began, lowering his voice. I appreciate your effort, but this is excessive. You have to learn how to manage finances. Marriage is not about showing off, okay? Kelvin smiled faintly. Thank you, sir. I understand. The pastor sighed. All right, just remember what I said. You will thank me one day. He had no idea who he was talking to. That day was perfect. Laughter, tears, dance, joy. Juliet glowed, not because of the luxury, but because she couldn't believe her life had turned out this beautiful. And Kelvin, the billionaire who had hidden his wealth behind simplicity, looked at her with quiet gratitude. Because for the first time, someone had chosen him, not his money. But somewhere, a twist of fate was already waiting. The one that would leave Pastor Daniel speechless when the truth finally came out. The wedding was over, but the joy lingered like a soft perfume. Juliet and Kelvin spent the next morning packing quietly. She couldn't stop smiling. Everything had gone perfectly, far beyond her imagination. She looked at him as he folded his shirt. Kelvin, yesterday felt like a dream. I don't even know how to thank you. He smiled. Then don't. Just stay happy. That's all I want. You made everyone proud. Even Pastor was speechless. He chuckled softly. I noticed. But she hesitated. How did you even afford all that? The wedding, the venue, the food. It must have cost a fortune. He zipped his bag and turned to her, smiling. Let's just say God made a way. She tilted her head, half suspicious, half in awe. You are a mystery, Kelvin. He only smiled again and kissed her forehead. You will understand in time. Their honeymoon was like a page out of a fairy tale. They flew out the next day, Mauritius. Sunlight dancing on turquoise water, white sand beneath their feet. Juliet felt like she was living someone else's life. Everywhere they went, hotel staff treated Kelvin with quiet reverence, not just respect, but recognition. When the resort manager personally welcomed him, she whispered, It's an honor to finally host you again, sir. Juliet blinked, confused. Again? Kelvin only smiled politely and thanked the woman before guiding Juliet to their suite, a breathtaking ocean view villa. She looked around the marble floors, the private pool, the glass walls. Kelvin, she said slowly, this place must cost thousands of dollars a night. He smiled, taking off his jacket. Relax, Juliet. We deserve it. Deserve it? She laughed nervously. I thought we were saving money. We are, he replied calmly. Don't worry about anything. Just enjoy the moment. But inside, she couldn't help wondering. Teachers didn't stay in luxury resorts. They didn't fly business class or get personal greetings from hotel managers. Something wasn't adding up. Meanwhile, back home, Pastor Daniel sat in his study that evening, sipping tea and replaying the wedding in his mind. The images wouldn't leave him. The luxury cars, the caterers, the grandeur. Everything screamed money, serious money. He'd even overheard one guest telling another that the groom was quite influential in the corporate world. He had laughed it off then. But now, alone in his study, he felt a strange unease. How could a primary school teacher afford all that? He muttered. His wife, Grace, walked in. You are still thinking about the wedding? Yes, he said. Grace, that young man isn't ordinary. There's something he didn't tell us. Like what? Like the truth about who he really is. Grace chuckled. Maybe he borrowed money just to impress. Or what do you think? No, He said quickly. No one borrows millions just to host a wedding. Even the event planners, they spoke to him with respect. I saw it. Grace shrugged. Maybe he has connections. Or maybe, the pastor whispered, eyes narrowing, maybe I've made a mistake. The following week, news began to spread quietly. A member of the church stumbled on a viral business article online titled, Billionaire Investor Kelvin Brown expands his education foundation to new regions. Underneath was a crisp photo. Kelvin himself standing beside government officials. By evening, the entire church WhatsApp group was buzzing. Wait, this is Juliet's husband. You mean the same teacher? Oh my God, Pastor really didn't know? Even the deacons were stunned. Someone finally called Pastor Daniel. Sir, I think you should see this. The man said hesitantly, it's about Brother Kelvin. When the pastor clicked the link, his hands began to tremble. The article was clear. Kelvin Brown, billionaire philanthropist, CEO of a multinational education foundation, known for his quiet generosity and low profile. He sat back in his chair, completely silent. Grace noticed his face and rushed over. What happened? He turned the phone towards her. Her eyes widened. Is this our Kelvin? He nodded slowly, speechless. Grace covered her mouth. You told me he was a teacher. He said he was, the pastor whispered. He told me he taught primary school. Then, why would he hide this? He swallowed hard, maybe to test us. An hour later, Mary, their daughter, came home from school and found her parents in the living room, staring at the phone screen. What's going on? She asked. Grace looked up. Mary, you remember Brother Kelvin? Of course, the one who wanted to marry me. Yes, the pastor said quietly. That same one. What about him? He hesitated. He wasn't a teacher, he's a billionaire. Mary froze. What? He owns a global education company. Everything about him was a test. She stared at her father, disbelief flooding her face. You told him I wasn't God's will. Mary, come on. No, Dad, she snapped. You said you prayed about it. You said God didn't approve. Grace sighed heavily. Mary, calm down. Calm down? You made me lose a good man because he looked broke. And now Juliet, the same girl you thought he was doing a favor for, is married to a billionaire. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? Her father dropped his head into his hands, shame washing over him like a tide. Grace shook her head slowly. You always say you don't judge by sight, but look at what you've done. You judged that man the moment he said he was a teacher. The room felt silent except for the ticking clock. The pastor finally whispered, I thought I was protecting her. No, Grace said quietly. You were protecting your pride. Juliet's phone wouldn't stop buzzing that evening. Friends from church were calling one after another, some congratulating her in disbelief, others asking questions she couldn't answer. Juliet, is it true? One friend shouted on the phone. Your husband is a billionaire. She froze, staring at the screen. What? Check your messages. Everyone is talking about it. Her hands trembled as she hung up and opened the phone. Dozens of messages flashed across the screen. Screenshots, links, articles. And there it was again. His face. Kelvin standing at a conference, wearing the same calm smile she saw every morning. Her breath caught. For a long moment, she just stared at the photo, unable to process it. When Kelvin came out of the bathroom, drying his hands, she turned the screen towards him, her eyes wide. Kelvin, what is this? He looked at it, sighed softly and smiled. I guess the secret is out. She blinked, her voice trembling. You mean this is you? He nodded slowly. But why didn't you tell me? He walked closer and took her hands. Because I needed to be sure. Juliet, I have met so many people who loved what I had, not who I was. I wanted to know what love felt like when everything material was stripped away. And you gave me that. Tears welled in her eyes as she stared at him. All this time you knew? And you still lived simply, acted normal. He smiled gently. You never made me feel small. Even when you thought I had nothing, you respected me. You prayed for me. You believed in me. That means more than any wealth I owned. She covered her face, laughing and crying at the same time. So, my husband is a billionaire. She chuckled softly. If it makes you feel better, your husband is still a teacher, just one with a few extra students. She hugged him tightly, her heart swelling with gratitude and disbelief. You don't know what this means to me. You could have chosen anyone, Kelvin, but you chose me because you saw me before anyone else did. That night, Pastor Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in his study, reading Kelvin's interview again and again. The part where he said, I believe true love isn't found when people know your worth, but when they don't. He closed his laptop, covered his face, and whispered, God, forgive me. A week later, Kelvin and Juliet returned from their honeymoon, radiant and happy. When they visited the church the next Sunday, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone wanted to see them. As Juliet walked in hand with Kelvin, she could feel the eyes, the murmurs, the awe. But she wasn't proud. She was humbled. During testimony time, she stood up, heart pounding, and asked to speak. She took a deep breath, holding the microphone with trembling hands. I just want to thank God, she began softly. When Pastor told me that Brother Kelvin was God's will for me, I didn't understand. I didn't feel ready. I didn't even think I deserved someone so good. But I obeyed. I trusted God. And now I see God's plan is always bigger than our sight. She paused, looking around the room. I didn't marry a billionaire. I married a man of integrity, humility, and kindness. The wealth was just a bonus. The entire church went silent. Pastor Daniel's eyes glistened as he bowed his head. Juliet continued, sometimes God hides blessing in the most ordinary wrapping, just to see if we will trust him enough to look deeper. Then she smiled at Kelvin and the crowd erupted in applause. After service, Pastor Daniel approached them. His voice shook. My son, my daughter, I owe you both an apology. I misjudged. Not you, but God's way of working. Kelvin smiled kindly. You don't owe us anything, sir. God was teaching all of us something. The pastor's eyes misted. You were more than a test, Kelvin. You were a mirror. You showed me how easily I could mistake appearance for truth. He turned to Juliet. And you, my dear, taught me what faith looks like. Trusting even when it doesn't make sense. Juliet smiled through tears. It was all grace, sir. The pastor nodded, his voice trembling. Grace indeed. And as they walked away, Pastor Daniel watched them, heart heavy, spirit humbled. He realized something he'd preached 100 times but never truly lived. Sometimes, the people you look down on are the very ones God sent to lift you up. That night, as Kelvin and Julia drove home, the city light stretched before them like a sea of stars. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, Now, I understand why God brought you my way. He smiled, resting his hands on hers. And I understand why he brought you mine. She looked out the window, smiling to herself. You know, Pastor thought he was doing me a favor by marrying me off to a poor man. Kelvin chuckled softly. He was. He just didn't know it was the favor of God. Their laughter filled the car, gentle and real, echoing the sweet irony of grace. That what some call misfortune is often heaven's best disguise. Sometimes, life hides its greatest blessings behind ordinary faces. The people we overlook may be the very ones sent to change our lives. So, never judge a man by his appearance because God's gifts often come dressed in simplicity. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like it, drop a comment, share with your friends, your family, and your loved ones. I'll see you in the next. Goodbye.